jump into the very first question, which is
Um,
if you could just talk a little bit about your journey to music. From what I know of you, I've seen you play the guitar. I've seen you doing, you write songs, you sing songs. I've seen you mess around on the keyboard. So you produce a bit in a DAW of some sort. I don't know if you're in Ableton or Logic, but yeah, just shed a little bit of light on how you got into music. When did you pick up your first instrument, or when did you realize like, yo, I wanna first one, like when did you start enjoying music, like I like this artist or I like this song, and then when did you start like
mhm.
getting into it, playing it?
Yeah, so I guess when I first began to notice that I had an interest in art, specifically music, I would say music was my first love when it comes to art. At this point, I have I guess you would call it, different mistresses and within the within the art umbrella, but
Hmm.
music was my first love interest for sure. And it was pretty early on. I remember being probably like 8 years old, and just on the radio, I would hear like it was either like early rock and roll or like blues type of music that I remember being really attracted to.
Hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know that it was, like certain types of rock and roll, and I didn't know that there was such a thing called blues music until later on. And then later on, I just picked up that, oh, what's this blues stuff? And oh, that sounds, oh, I see. And I kind of put two and two together. But yeah, and for some reason that type of music really attracted me as a young kid,
Hmm.
and it just evolved from because I've always been one of those people that when something piques my interest, I just go hard and I just completely nerd out. Never really public, like I'd never like tell people about it until I'm like a semi-expert basically. But just either at this point it's like YouTube videos, but back then it was whatever I could find, like any kind of like booklets or like in the 90s, whatever you could find at that point, like TV shows. But I mean, just little by little, I began to evolve into, like late 60s stuff. And I'm like, oh, like guitar stuff was pretty big in the 60s and the 70s, like stuff like Eric Clapton and like Led Zeppelin. That was most of my like teenage years, where there was a lot of like hard rock and heavy blues music and some metal and stuff like that. And yeah, I just knew that because a lot of people enjoy music and that type of music and other types of music, but for me, it wasn't enough to just sit back and enjoy it. I just kind of knew that I was like, okay, I like what I hear, but I know that if I were to try, I could definitely could do something like that or something different. For for some reason, I just had that that kind of inner confidence that I just wanted to try that instrument, and that I knew that I would I don't know, be at least okay at it. So yeah, it eventually got a guitar. I think it was around 18 or 19 actually. And yeah, like again, like if anything, I went pretty hard on it. Pretty much it was like a full-time job for me. It was like 8 hours a day or so, just fiddling around and stuff. Uh and then just little by little, I guess, got better and better. But I didn't start performing for a long time because I went up to school to NAU for a few years, and there really wasn't much of an art scene up there. Like I remember I sat in on some blues bands that played like on Monday night blues at one of the local bars. I did that a couple of times, but there wasn't really like an art scene like there is in Phoenix. And so it was a few years of just me kind of just on my own playing, getting better and better for years. And then it wasn't until I moved back down to Phoenix after I finished school that I really kind of by accident just kind of ran across the art scene, and that's where I ended up at meeting you guys. Yeah, yeah. Actually, it was a riff. It was "Sunshine of Your Love" by Cream. It was one of the bands that Eric Clapton was in the like mid late '60s, and I remember that because it's one of those things where when you're first learning guitar, you learn things like Stairway to Heaven or Smoke on the Water is another really famous riff. But it's one of those things where like everybody has played it, and you just don't play it at Guitar Center. It's like it's one of those things because everybody's like, oh Jesus, dude. Um, and so I was conscious of that. And so I had by that point, by the time I picked up the instrument myself, I had a pretty wide knowledge of all of hard rock, early blues music, late blues music, like Chicago blues, British blues. I had all kinds of stuff in my mind. So I knew, I'm like, that's the song I want to learn. It sounds easy enough. It
Yeah.
sounds cool as hell. And boom. So yeah, Sunshine of Your Love by Cream.
Okay. Nah, I have to look that up. I don't think that I personally know it. I'm gonna have to look that up. But I always wonder, cause like for me, like I only dabbled, but like the first thing I learned was like it was like a more of like a picking thing. It was a India Irie song, "The Truth," and I just learned that on guitar, and literally I would just play that anytime I picked it up. Like it'll
Mm,
be months, even to this day. Like if I try to pick it up after it's been a while, like that'll be the first thing I
hmm.
go to kind of get my feeling, because I feel like once I get through that, I'm warm, and I can like
Right.
do other things.
Yeah, in a way, I'm kind of like that still. Like when I pick it up now, I just have these licks or these riffs that I go to just to kind of like like a runner, typically doesn't just walk out on the track and just boom,
Take
just
off,
goes. He
yeah.
does have his little routine, like he's got the little side stretches and whatever he does, little warm up, kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can, man, describe your creative process. Like, if you were to like, be in the mood to like make a song right now, how would you like one either brainstorm ideas? Like, what's your process for brainstorming ideas, and how do you capture those ideas? Are you like, turn on your phone and just record a voice memo, or do you open up the computer and kind of start a whole project?
Yeah, so right now, I guess, this would be a pretty good setting to do something like that because, like the lighting is nice. It's not too bright, but it's not too dark. I actually don't have my night light on yet, but that's gonna go on in a little bit. But yeah, it's got a little ambiance to it. Yeah, so like right now, I have like a little screensaver going on in my screen here, my TV, and it's just like the Roku fish tank screensaver, so nothing big. But one thing that I am big on that's something it's probably one of those things that if other creatives hear this, some might be like, what? And others would be like, I do the exact same thing. Where like I have to have some kind of visual stimulus as I'm playing music, or if I'm writing something, or I do a lot of graphic art now as well. I like digital sketching and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
So one thing I have in mind actually, so after this is done, whenever that may be, I'm gonna go downstairs and grill some dinner, but then I'm gonna go on like a binge probably between tonight and tomorrow, watching Halloween 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
6, the producer's cut. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, I don't intend to watch Halloween 4, 5, and 6 just and just being zoned into the movie. It's rare. It's very rare that I sit down and actually watch a movie and pay attention to it from start to finish because I zone out pretty hardcore a lot. As a kid, I've always had that thing where, at school it was an issue, and it was back then it was a problem because you didn't pay attention. But nowadays it was like, oh, that's kind of what I would do to get ideas and stuff. You just kind of zone out. But but yeah, so I just put on a movie that I'm either familiar with, like the Halloween movies. I've seen those a bunch of times, and I'll see something in the screen, like if I'm sketching something, I'll see something in the screen that I'm like, I like that orange pumpkin thing from that. I'm like, oh, okay. And that'll kind of spark something. Like I'm not gonna start drawing pumpkins, but the color orange might spark a memory that I have of something else that doesn't even rhyme with orange, but I'm like, I remember that's a cool. I was there that day, and that was a cool view I had. I could sketch that, and And so for some reason, visual stimulus for me is big. It's rare that I have the screen off. And I know that sounds super like millennial or super, Gen Z. Like, oh, I can't have the screen off. But for me, it's part of that creative process. I guess I got to be seeing like colors or a movement or something like that.
Right, right. No, that's true. Cause I like one of the members of the collective, like when he produces his beats, I don't know so much if it's a part of his process today, but he would always just have like random music videos, just playing on mute, but they'll just be playing, and just like the vibe of how people are like, portraying themselves on camera and like the aesthetic of what's going on in the different music videos just helps him come up with different vibes or, moments and feelings that he's looking to like bring across in his music. So not so much like
Mm,
he's listening to that music for inspiration. He's just looking at body movement, cars, jewelry or landscapes, like whatever is going on there.
right. Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense to me. And that reminds me as well of, I mean, you've definitely been to Travis White parties. He always
Right.
has some kind of like something on the screen as well, like music videos or something.
Right. Yeah.
And for no apparent reason, just for you to have something on. But a lot of times I have memories of being at his parties and getting ideas either from like a song that he has on or something I saw on the screen, and I kind of like jot it down really quick and I go back to it later. Um, Tyndall music, shout out to Tyndall as well.
Yes, sir.
Whenever I've jammed with her, she typically likes to have some kind of like psychedelic visual. So I picked that up from her actually. I'm like, "Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
where'd you get that stuff?" Like, "Oh, it's just YouTube." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
And yeah, you just like YouTube psychedelic visuals, and there are tons of like 4 or 5 hour videos of like psychedelic images, and
Right.
some have music, some don't. But yeah, it's great background visuals to have around.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I've definitely, just pulling up to any of Trav's functions, got put on to new music, or new music videos. The guy who's a good friend with Travis, who also paints a lot of our plants. So like the plant that's on the hat, the hang in there plant that we have, he
Mm,
painted those. But like anytime that I hang out with them or Trav or either one of those guys independently, like I always come up on a new music video, some kind of new music,
right.
because like they always just keep a dense playlist of stuff, and it's like kind of
Oh
competitive
yeah.
between those guys. They're always just trying to put each other onto like the newest, like, you know either niche or like
Yeah.
coolest or something about it. So it's always good to
Yeah,
have that inspiration.
for sure, man. I feel that because of the last year with that really nothing happened. There was no shows or no parties that I knew about at least. I'm really behind in latest music because yeah, like, there was a lot of times where at Travis's parties or other parties or even at shows like your guys' shows, you guys got the DJs going and stuff. A lot of times I was like, have my Shazam out and like, ooh, what's that song? Ooh, what's that song? Because it wasn't really until I came across Phoenix art scene that I really got into hip hop. Like before then, my entire music universe was more like guitar based stuff. And there is some guitar in hip hop, but it's just not one of the prominent instruments like it is in blues or like old hard rock or even current hard rock, really. And so when I got into the scene, I was like, I don't do any hip hop at all. So at first I was a little skeptical, but it kind of worked out. But yeah, through all of you guys, I found current hip hop, older hip hop, and I was like, whoa. So pretty much discovered hip hop through all of you guys. So props to you guys.
Hey man, that's dope. That's dope. So
Yeah.
what? I mean, is it something that you've no pressure, of course, but like, is it something that you felt like man, like it's been a like an eye opening thing for you? Has it been something that you may not necessarily like look to incorporate into your music, but like, I don't know, has it shifted any way that you like create or make music or approach it at all?
Yeah, definitely, because it did kind of open my eyes to the fact that there was some guitar in hip hop, whereas before I thought there was virtually none.
Mm-hmm.
And and so I heard a few things. I'm like, ooh, that's guitar. And I'm like, ooh, I could at least make that with the guitar. and maybe make it sound a little bit better with the guitar because I have like the effects pedals and stuff like that. And I definitely began to incorporate a lot of things from hip hop into my music because before it was very much blues based. Like I would call my music before, very like blues based something. But it really wasn't until I began to hear what you guys were all doing and seeing that there were some similarities because um I would say that if today's black artists were alive in the 60s, like you know, how old they are now, 50, 60 years ago, they would all be blues players or they would be blues artists because that was kind of, if you kind of look back at those times, the 50s, even the 40s, if you go way back into blues history, like the early guitar stuff, 40s, 50s, 60s, a lot of the like edgy black artists were blues guitar players. I mean, Jimi Hendrix was a pretty edgy artist for his time because nobody, I mean, nowadays a lot of people in Phoenix look like Jimi Hendrix.
Hmm.
They dress like Jimi Hendrix just
Right.
because they're hippies or hipsters or whatever they're called these days. But back in the 60s, there wasn't that many people that dressed like Jimi Hendrix. And he was a blues based guitar player.
Hmm.
Um, and so I realized that there was that connection, at least that today's hip hop artists were kind of like the blues players of back then, and kind of vice versa. And so, I mean, there's definitely a connection between blues and hip hop because it's the main foundation of both genres is black artists, African American artists.
Hmm.
So there are certainly connections, and if you're familiar with blues music, you can pick them out in hip hop, and you can if you're familiar with hip hop, you can probably listen to blues music and be like, oh, that I can see how maybe this one artist came up with that one riff or whatever. There was a sample of that, stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Okay. Well, also, a lot of it is been rooted in like, pain and storytelling and
Sure.
a lot of like, if you will, the emotional sides of life. How does any of that play into, what led you to blues, or blues esque vibes? Was it just like that playing style appealed to you, so you went with it, or were you actually like, yo, I'm feeling, I'm looking to express, and these things connect with me based on like how I'm feeling?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's something that I do wonder myself and have thought about over the years because even as a kid, when I got into blues music, nobody around me was into blues music. I mean, this would have been like the mid '90s, and I was going to public schools in Chicago. And I mean, in middle school, everybody who at the time was into NSYNC and Britney Spears and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Nobody was into older stuff like I was, like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or BB King and things like that. Nobody even had heard of most of that stuff. And so it is kind of unclear to me as well, um, why that specific type of music called to me, I guess. Whereas everything around me was either hip hop because this was like the mid '90s, like I said, so a lot of hip hop and Chicago. I
I didn't know you
Everything
were from
but blues.
Chicago, man. That's dope.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Lincoln Park and Albany Park were like the two areas that I was around the most. But yeah, so everything but blues was around me, and so it is kind of surprising to me as well that I kind of chose that. Uh,
Okay. No, I just wondered too, cause like, I mean, in my opinion, like whenever I saw you out, um, and you were like playing, I always just thought it was, just unique, man. Like you just, like you're
mm,
just pretty confident in your style. Even the songs that you came up with, they fit the vibe of like the blues feel, like you were saying. Obviously, like it's very on point
yeah,
with like the root and inspiration of the genre. But like even with the wordplay in some of the songs, they'll have a little bit of humor in there too. It's not like the songs are necessarily dark. There'll be points into which like you could laugh, or chuckle while listening. And
yeah,
I always thought that was
yeah.
dope and
Thanks,
like
man.
unique.
Yeah, Appreciate that. Yeah, that is something that I am conscious of whenever I do write a song. I try to, I do put a lot of effort into the lyrics themselves. And that's mainly because a lot of times when I hear music, even nowadays, the lines that I hear are still very kind of cringy, to be honest. It's just like
Mm.
kind of overused, like, oh, I'm crazy about you. I'm like, how many times have you heard that in the song?
How so?
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so when I write songs, I try to avoid overuse lines like that. And if I
Hmm.
were to use something like that, it would be kind of like in a satirical way, maybe.
Hmm.
Because I am conscious about, because one of the things I guess, that motivates a lot of what I do is this kind of like a a general fear of being just like a normal person and of being just like, oh yeah, that dude, oh yeah, he's a songwriter or he's a guitar player, oh he's a graphic artist. I don't really know what I want to be known as, but I don't like to be known as just one thing, which is maybe why I've also liked to dabble in different types of art.
Yeah.
But the same with my songwriting. I don't like my songs, my lyrics to sound like a million other songs that are out there.
No, and that makes sense. I mean, and that's also something very good to like keep in mind because, like, I mean, we're in a generation of everything's kind of fast paced, and especially in terms of hip hop, it's like not there's a group of people specifically probably for rap that really care about lyrics, but when it comes to hip hop, it's more, for some, it's like the simplest bars, the things that can be a little easier to repeat, the things that can are catchy, the things that catch on tend to go up,
Hmm.
so I feel like just keeping in mind, given that you're creating a lane for yourself, like one with other genres, you're able to. I enjoy poetry, specifically because I can like flesh out the longer version of my ideas if I want to. You know what I'm saying? Instead of like if I tried
Hmm.
to fit that into a rap verse, it'll be like, come on, bro, where's the hook? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like they're
Right.
waiting for the part to turn them up. You know what I'm saying? Whereas with poetry, I could just take my time and flesh out those ideas. And songwriting, and when you're doing other genres, you could kind of play around with the format and tell your story a little differently. Um, would do you have any musical influences, just like any folks either creating today or just like from the past that you stem from when you write, or that you channel their energy when you get ready to go on stage?
Yeah, I would say as far as I would say musical vibes, I still definitely like to be. I just like the blues. Like I don't know what it is. Like I could definitely just learn other styles. Like I do know some jazz and I know a couple of other things, but for some reason, just like really what I just like to play and what makes me feel good to play is just blues licks and blues style of music. Even so, I mean, basically, yeah. So like a lot of the classic guys like your BB King, Albert King, and Freddie King, like those guys. Definitely like, everybody that people who knows music has heard of, like Eric Clapton, Hendrix, of course.
Hmm.
But
Any folks out there doing it today that are like leaving a mark, or say, oh, that guy's like has a unique take on blues?
yeah, like Gary Clark Jr. I
Okay.
like I like his music. I actually saw him live a number of years ago. Like this is back in like 2013 or yeah, I think it was 2010 maybe. It was at one of the Eric Clapton Crossroads festivals, and one of the artists was Gary Clark Jr. So that was pretty cool. Um, and like Derek Trucks, he's like a slide guitar player. But to be Santana, even though I mean he's playing nowadays, but he was bigger back in the day. But these days, what I'm trying to do is just find inspiration in different types of music that aren't blues, because I know that in one way or another, even if it's I don't even know, like a Beyonce track or something. If I were to be influenced somehow by a Beyonce track, I would somehow find like a blues thing to tie it to. So I'm listening to a lot less blues nowadays and a lot more of everything else because I'm I'm looking for different types of inspirations to make my music a little more different because uh, I wouldn't even call my music blues.
Hmm.
I typically call it blueberry jam is what I
Ah,
typically say
yeah, I remember that.
when, when people ask, and it just came because it's kind of like a mixture of blues and like jam music, and jam music is almost like jazz music. It's just open to so many different things, and I've kind of refined it to like psychedelic blues is kind of how I would describe it now if I had to put it to regular words.
Okay. No, I like that a lot, and I do remember Blueberry Jam. I feel like we've mentioned that in conversation
Yeah,
a couple times between
right.
like Point of View open mic or somewhere around town. Um,
Hmm.
okay, so you did mention that you are listening to a lot more stuff outside of blues. What subscription are you like listening to music on? Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, YouTube.
Right now it's Apple. I mean, I've been thinking about switching to Spotify for a while. I just
Hmm.
haven't done it because it's one of those things that like most things I have are Apple.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, I mean it's like a lot of different stuff. Like I went to like an art night show like a month ago or so, and then they had a DJ, so I picked up a couple songs in my Shazam. It's just like even like Viva Tirado, El Chicano. I don't even know really what that is.
Hmm.
It's one of the tracks that I just liked and I picked it up. I The Mortal Kombat theme song. I just love that song.
Uh-huh.
It's still one of the best songs that come out of the '90s. I feel that original Mortal Kombat track from the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's really I just go somewhere. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I'll Shazam it and whatever it might be, like some Billie Eilish I have on my stuff. I don't even listen. I couldn't even name one Billie Eilish song,
Right.
but I have a couple in my search.
So do you click around in like
Um,
different playlists that are on there as well and just kind of, get put onto music by like, whatever pops up on the interface?
yeah, because one of the things that I do as well is I teach yoga. I was doing that for a while before the pandemic,
Okay.
and then so for that you gotta build playlists for your classes,
Yeah.
and you could just go. I mean, you can just go on the iTunes app and Google or search for yoga, and there are a ton of playlists that come up. So I found a lot of good stuff through that. I mean, it's under the yoga label, but it's like Brazilian jazz. That's super cool. It's like, yeah, you
Mm,
could totally use that in a yoga class, but it's a totally badass track by itself
yeah.
as
Okay.
well.
Okay. Yeah, I was talking to another buddy of mine, Juniper Ridge, and we were just having a conversation about, cause right now I currently subscribe to both. I'm on Apple and Spotify. They're both
Mm.
claiming my coins at this point. But originally, like I was using Apple, just cause like I was familiar with it. But I realized though on Spotify, like it tends to put me on to new music a lot more, based on just like the random things that I'm listening to. It'll just like pop up,
Okay.
one day, with just something that is in the ballpark of things that I listen to. Obviously there are some misses, but like mostly when I'm on Apple Music, I'm like searching for things that I found already, and like trying to add
Mm.
it to my playlist that I've created. Sometimes the hip hop playlist or the or any other playlist on there I do get put on and stuff, but even if I'm not in a playlist on Spotify, I could just run across something that's like really dope.
Okay.
Not that I'm trying to bring you over to any
Yeah.
side. Like I said, I'm on both sides.
Is it the same price?
I believe so, yeah. And honestly, I started with Apple Music to be completely honest, because like I was still using like my ASU login, and I was able to get like the student price, which was like
Mm, okay.
$5 versus the $10, or I think it's 10 now.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
10 because I think that's what I pay for Apple. Yeah, because one of the things I heard from somebody was that when you create a playlist on Spotify, you can do you can fade from one song to the other, and
Yeah, I
like
think
there's little
so.
things like that you can do on Spotify that you can't do on Apple. If I was still teaching at this point, I might be more inclined to get Spotify for stuff like that. Um, But which one would do you prefer? Like, if you had to drop one, which one would you keep?
Um, I think I think as a person that I feel like it's more tools also like because I make music as well. Like I'm leaning more towards the Spotify way, just because the
Mm,
tools that it has also for just artists that are putting out music for them to track their metrics and how they're getting attention and where their traffic is coming from and the frequent like the relevance of a Spotify playlist for an artist. If it's like a
hmm.
young artist that's trying to come up and they land on the right Spotify playlist, they could end up with tons of streams. And people can follow them, they can follow their music releases. And the growth. I don't know too much about the algorithms for Spotify, but it just seems to you don't necessarily have to be the guy. But you can end up on a playlist, with the right song and get some real traffic that you could build off of. So obviously
Gotcha.
I haven't tested that out, because I haven't put out too much music to say, oh yeah, like I'm benefiting personally from these tools. But I've definitely know artists that are benefiting from it, with their releases, and I'm kind of seeing it firsthand, and I'm like, wow, like the Spotify
Gotcha.
magic is a thing for sure.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking to upgrade my software setup, and one of the things would be to do music more in the like with Ableton, because I have Ableton right now, and I have a MacBook Pro, but it's a few years old now. It's probably like, I don't know, it's 6 years old, maybe more at this point, which
Hmm.
isn't really that old, but in MacBook Pro years, it's pretty old. Like the battery is,
Yeah, man.
kind of dies pretty quickly.
I just switched from one that I
And
got in 2012, and it was from 2010.
mm,
Like,
wow,
and that's what I was using when we did the jam session with Johnny Rios and all that over here. Like,
okay.
that's what I was
So
on.
you have, yeah, you have a MacBook Pro now still?
No, I switched to PC, man. So I'm sitting. I got a big old gaming PC now.
Damn, you know what? I'm I'm on the fence right now between a gaming computer, a gaming laptop, and just like, setting myself up for the next few years with a MacBook Pro.
Right.
Because one of the things that I want to get into eventually is stuff like like visual effects, but not necessarily working in movies is my goal, but just creating like visual content
Mhm.
that is like, graphic design, Photoshop, but also like VFX type of material.
Right.
And I was just looking online, just kind of Googled like, best laptops for VFX or best laptops for graphic artists. And typically it's like, MacBook Pro is always somewhere on the list because
Right. Yeah.
just the MacBook Pro is just good for art in general.
True. Yeah.
But I have been looking at some PCs like the Acer Predator is a
Mhm.
gaming laptop that I've been looking into. It's probably like a full $1,000 cheaper than the MacBook Pro, but like the battery life is like 3 hours.
Mm.
Compared to like the MacBook Pro, it's like 11 hours or something like that. So I'm like,
Right.
oh my God, like, Apple's just so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely
Like,
tough. Like, even for me, like switching, just because like I had it for so long, all of my programs, like I was running Logic and Ableton as well. So now I'm all Ableton at this
mm,
point because Logic is an Apple product. Um, but
really? Okay, I
yeah,
did not know that.
yeah, they weren't for a
Mm,
while. But I think maybe I want to say almost 10 years now. It's pretty much the upgrade to GarageBand. Um, but yeah, no, I made the switch, dude, and I'm pretty happy and content with it. Obviously, I still use my Mac for certain things that I need to tackle and like take care of, but it just came down to the price, man. I looked at what the specs were that I needed to stream video editing, I am root shit, like what I'm saying, to take care of business, and the price
mm,
for that in a Mac computer ridiculous. For a Mac laptop, like I was looking at 3 grand almost, and I'm just like I don't know, whereas I look
right.
then I with the PC I can rebuild. Like Trav is really good with computers. A couple of my coworkers are really good with computers. So like with something that I'm able to buy more RAM for or switch up motherboard and like kind of do the things myself, with as I learned them, it just offered me a little more freedom to be able to, I didn't spend 3 grand, but I got just as much power. Obviously not
Right.
the smoothness and the finesse of a Mac. Like obviously there's a reason why Mac is priced at what it is, and all of that. But it was just like for my pocket's sake, but also to do some gaming shit. Like I do play a few video
Mm.
games, and like to multitask, it definitely is something that I looked into, and it's been working out so far. So ultimately, man, you
Yeah,
just got to
man.
figure out
Yeah.
what you feeling for your pockets, and also like what's gonna be best for the programs that you use. Luckily, you're on Ableton, so like you can run
Right.
Ableton on either one.
Yeah, and basically like it's funny, yeah, because I'm probably looking at the exact same MacBook Pro that you're looking at, because I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at the exact same price
Oh
that you
yeah,
were looking at. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like $3,000, and that's not even including all the adapters that you would need to get, because the
right,
MacBook Pros fucking don't come with it. They're like androgynous now. They have like no
exactly.
gender. There's nothing to plug in or something like
A
that. I'm
hundred
like,
percent.
come
You get
on.
the dongle and it has the thing with all the other ports, but it's like no regular USB. It's all USB C, no CD drive. All the new bells and whistles.
Yeah, it's hard to justify the price, but like the way I look at it too is that like if right now if I were to just have to like save up for a computer, I'd be like there's no way. I'm not gonna wait to save up 3 grand, however long it would take me, whether it take me 3 months or over a year, whatever it would be. I'm like, no. But luckily, I'm one of those people whose parents just like who were obsessed with me going to college. And um, even though I'm also one of those people with student loan debt, so it's not like, like I tell people that like, I'm like, dude, college only works when somebody pays for it. Like when your parents pay for it, it works. But when you get out of college and you're like $40,000 in debt,
Yeah,
$100,000 in debt, I'm like, it kind of defeats the purpose of having gone to college.
yeah,
And some people would argue otherwise. Well, whatever, you paid off, sure, yeah. So there are there are pros and cons, but the fact is, I'm one of those people who's in debt, but luckily, I'm like kind of drowning, but I still make enough to every so often splurge on things like that. So I'm in this weird spot where I'm like, I'm not rich because my net worth is in like the negatives essentially because I owe everybody money. Like the government owns me.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. I feel you.
But luckily, I'm not somebody who is tied to things like that. Like, somebody like some of my friends from school, they're either close to being done with their debt or pretty much debt free because they were like laser focused. They got like great careers right out of college and they knew what to do. And, I give them props for that. I also wasn't one of those people. I mean, I graduated college and I'm like, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
And so I bounced around a lot, and I had a lot of issues after college just because, um, I mean, I don't know how to say it, but I just didn't really have a regular upbringing. So like, people who generally go to college have like kind of like, not everybody, but they have kind of like that classic family structure where it's like, yeah, everybody's family is crazy, but you still have a family that kind of supports you in the right ways. Not that I didn't have a family that supported me, but it was just a different situation. And so basically all that boils down to, I know that I have this debt to pay off, but basically while I'm making some money, I might as well use it to fuel my passion, which I just feel is only a matter of time before my passion start giving me some money back. I just have that feeling too. So I'm like, it's like an investment basically is the way I see it, not really as like, oh, I'm just splurging.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. And like doing music or doing art, like these hobbies aren't cheap, man. It's just like
Oh, definitely.
I got a drum machine, a
Dude, some of you
keyboard. Like,
guys, all that stuff, Dumb Root, I'm like, dude, how did you afford all that? Because like, if I had to buy all that, I'm like, I would have to save up a lot.
right. Yeah, man. Just a little bit at a
Yeah,
time, honestly. A mic at a time here. Or, once I get
exactly.
a big check
Exactly.
from work, I get it there. And, like just just in March we celebrated 10 years of business, or 10 years in business. So, after 10 years of a little bit here, a little bit there, I look around and I got gear everywhere, and it's just, some stuff is a little dated now, and it's time for upgrade
Mm,
according to some standards. But I just, learn to try to use my stuff to the best of its ability. It's all not necessarily top of the line, but like, I'm just thankful for what I have and what I've been able to get. Some stuff was a miss. I paid like $500 for some stuff that I don't use as much, as I thought I would before I got it. But who's to say like in 10 years that might be the instrument I use every day? It's just
right.
right now it's just so much going on. It's just like I'm not saying every purchase is the best purchase, but like when I'm in those moments I do think a lot about it. I try not to just buy anything that pops up. I try to buy things that I need or that I think that'll help production, making music, or things that'll push I Am Root forward.
For
But
sure,
yeah.
man. Yeah. That's what I've been telling people about this word passion, because it's one of these hot words that's been around for a while now. It's taught, hashtag passions, all that kind of stuff. And I used to think that it was one thing, like I used to think that it was like the one thing that you couldn't bear to be without. Like, oh, I gotta play music every day, otherwise I would be miserable. Okay, yeah, you know what? In a way, that's kind of true. But also, I was willing to put in hours and hours of work a day for music, though. It wasn't just like I was like, oh, I was just good overnight. Like a lot of people kind of think that, I feel. Like a lot of people do miss that whole concept of the amount of work that goes into being an artist.
Right.
Like the amount of hours that go in every day. Like you just like you don't date because you want to stay in and practice. You don't go to like that party, that kegger party, because you're like, nah, bro, I just want to stay home and jam tonight. And because a lot of times, because yeah, what you just said about a little bit at a time, and you build all that stuff, it's like a little empire you have there, basically.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like I have I have some things. I have a pretty good Fender amp. I have a good Fender guitar and a good, like a good keyboard. I got Ableton and stuff. But yeah, obviously I didn't just go one day and be like, all right,
One
I'll
trip to
drop me.
Guitar Center.
Yeah, let me get one of everything. That didn't happen. It was definitely little by little. And what I find passion to be nowadays is more like the different elements to this word passion. One element is what you just can't imagine not doing. I can't imagine not sketching every day. I can't imagine not singing every day or whatever. But another element or another side dimension to passion, if you will, is what you're willing to put in all your effort into.
Mm.
Because as I've been collecting my own equipment over the years, there's been a lot of times where, people have come over to my place or people have just seen some of my equipment, like, oh, dude, how much you spend on that? I'm like, I tell them and they're like, oh, bro, Jesus. And I'm like, and to me, it was just like, dude, what else am I going to spend my money on?
Right. Yeah.
Like, to me, it wasn't even like a second thought. I'm like, of course I'm going to drop almost $2,000 on the guitar. Like, why wouldn't I? To somebody else, it would be ludicrous. But then typically the people who are like, oh, bro, when you kind of analyze what they do, they don't really do much themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I go to the art scene and I see everybody perform, everybody's rolling out all kinds of like amazing equipment that I'm like, holy shit, that must have been, there's no way that was less than $1,000. I kind of have an idea of what some of this stuff is worth, kind of the same as you do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm like, yeah, dude, all these people have kind of that same thing as me. I'm like, it doesn't really matter what it costs. You save up, you do whatever it takes, because that's what's going to get you to express yourself in the way that you want to express yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true, man. And too, some folks like what they spend their money on is different. Like me, I don't do too much shopping. Like I just bought new clothes for the first time in maybe a year and some weeks. Or even longer.
Right.
So it's just like when I get my money, my goals are equipment things. I'm looking at microphones. I got microphones on my wall. I subscribe to Sweetwater, all the Tape Op magazine, all
Nice.
the places that just let you know about new gear and this is coming out and that's gonna help you. Cause like I went to school for audio. I went to ASU, but afterwards I went to MCC for audio production stuff specifically. Cause like I was
Okay.
always into music creation. I've been making music since about 10. Just making beats using Reason and or Fruity Loops from back when, before it was FL Studio. But I felt like, I knew all this stuff. I had I Am Root going, but I didn't know the stuff behind the music. Like, what am I doing with this EQ? Like, why am I EQing right now? Like, I knew the hertz, I knew it was
Right.
up and down, but like, and instead of solo in each track and EQing them independently, like understanding how to the science behind the mix, why we're mixing and how to get those sounds to
Mm.
blend and all that stuff. So it was definitely something like once I got into that program, I'm just looking at gear, and that's how I understood the difference between like a dynamic and a condenser microphone and like why we need them.
Yeah.
Because like you look online at a condenser microphone and you're like, damn, $3,000. Like you just see the price and it's just ridiculous. And I think that I need that, but I live in an
Right.
apartment with high ceilings. Like I have no use right now for a condenser microphone because my room isn't treated enough for the highest end condenser microphone. You know what I'm saying? I could use one, but
Mm.
I spend all my money on that. I'll probably be better off dropping a couple hundred on a good dynamic microphone, which is,
Right.
more so necessary in a space that doesn't have the best acoustics. But I didn't know that stuff. I would
Hmm.
have just been Googling what's the best mic, and then that would have
Right.
been my goal is that four thousand
Yeah.
dollar condenser. And then I'm, booking sessions and having people come by and not understanding why, like, I'm hearing my neighbors, like making tea or whatever it is. So
Right. Yeah, that's funny you say that because I think that's exactly probably where I'm at right now. Because I also one of the things I do is a podcast, and when I got the equipment for that, I literally did that. I'm like best microphones for podcasts. I'm like, oh, it's one of the like I see that brand and a bunch of different lists. Okay, let's see that brand here. I'm like, okay, that's a reasonable price. No knowledge of dynamics or anything technical. I was like, I've seen that brand in a number of different lists. That's a reasonable price. I'm getting that mic.
right.
And I mean, so far it's worked out so far. But yeah, it would be nice to know that. So it's definitely cool to have that training as a foundation because, like one thing that I have done a whole lot recently is jam with a lot of people, and in some ways, I just feel it's because I myself am a little self-conscious about jamming with other people because I really only like certain types of music.
Hmm.
Uh, like it's honestly just like blues-based type, dark themes, gypsy notes, like that just sound just like that's a certain sound to them. I know how to play other things, but I'm always kind of nervous that when I go jam with somebody, I'm not going to have any idea how to play anything that they want me to play because I really don't spend any of my time doing anything else other than what makes me feel good. And what makes me feel good is just blues type of stuff and
Hmm.
maybe some metal, maybe some hip hop, maybe a little bit of jazz here and there, a little bit of this, a little of that, but always just that one like foundation. And so in that regard, I kind of just keep to myself a lot. But at the same time, I feel like I have a lot of different things that I could do with people. So I'm in that weird thing where I'm like, I could, but I'm like, should I? And I'm like, I kind of just like being on my own, but it'd be cool to see what we have to say about this, that sort
Hmm.
of thing. So I'm kind of like a hermit too when it comes to being an artist. I see everybody else posting a lot, and I'm like, I kind of just like I'm over here in my corner.
Yeah, no, I definitely
So
can like associate with that as well. Like it's been a journey, honestly. Like 10 years of putting together this whole I Am Root thing. Like in a way, Dom Root, the artist, got buried. You know what I'm saying? And like
mm,
it was just everything is through the lens of I Am Root. The collective, the brand, the events, the merch. It was just like
right,
so. Honestly, the pandemic gave me that opportunity to kind of slow down and be like, really like I've been in some grant programs that have been more focused on Dom Root the artist. City of Tempe got a grant from them, and a grant from artists, Arizona Arts Commission. But like, so
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, like those three things happened, because like otherwise, like we were just focused on the next show, the next Rebel Lounge, the next thing, that
Right.
the just kind of spinning in that hamster wheel type of thing, where it's just like when you have so many things to try to juggle at once. Like, I'm a people person. Like, I get the most enjoyment out of seeing people like rock the stage, like, versus me just on there doing it and people clapping for me. Like, knowing that I put together this showcase where 8 people hit the stage and they got to just really do something that they thoroughly enjoy, and like seeing those smiles, like, are is a great feeling for me personally. So I'm always willing to, like, if you will, sacrifice, because some people that that would be crushing to them. Like, if they didn't have a chance to perform, like if I didn't perform at a Rebel Lounge show that we did, I'll be perfectly fine. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
for some artists who also do business, they feel as though they would have to do that spot. Sometimes I try to back out of it, but like it'll be like Francisco or somebody will talk to me like, nah, bro, you gotta do the set. Like, you can't not do it. But
For
I'd be,
sure. Yeah.
if I didn't have the space, like, I'd be completely fine, not tripping. But that energy, I guess, sort of just kind of carried over into me kind of pushing my music to the side, really, and like my focus, or like the things that I want to make, and like the direction that Dom Root music wants to take. Like, I got
Mm-hmm.
late night radio out, did Mad Million before, did Day Trip with E Nash, but like that was all in my spare time. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
never really just made my projects a priority. So yeah, man, like, 2020 has been a lot of that, just like, uh, just kind of figuring things out, and even when I like connect with people, I don't just want to make shit about. Like, when I was in high school, dude, I'd rap about whatever, cars, money that I didn't have, women that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know, like, whatever the case was. But like, I'm not in a space now of like creating stuff that I don't necessarily care too much about. Like, it does have to align with like the man that I am today. So in a way, I can kind of connect with you on that. Like, you play what you like, you play what makes you happy. So sometimes I get folks that want me to make beats and music that isn't my vibe. And it's just like, there's plenty of people out there that's making beats like that. It's like you could type in Drake type
Right.
beat and just email any of the 100 producers that pop up off the Drake type beat. But
Mm-hmm.
I do like creating experiences. I like learning. Like, that's why I enjoy working with like Stones and Johnny Rios's, and just the plethora of musicians that are here in Phoenix. One, because I'm not too deep like on theory, in terms of like knowing what's what, but picking little things up from different musicians like over time has definitely helped me make sense of things. Like, outside of the
Yeah.
technical, the hertz and EQ stuff, like actually like understanding the music and like changes. Like, one person that's been big on me in my production process has been Stone. Just like pushing me to
Mm-hmm.
add changes. He'll let me know when something's too repetitive or like too loopy, if you will. It's just like, yo, we need some
Right.
changes here. And for me, that's good energy. You know what I'm saying? That pushes me to think about like, all right, what does a change look like? Now I don't have the theory knowledge to be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna change that to a that, and that's gonna be that. I just push the next
Right.
button and see if that if that's what
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So do you aside from the production classes, do you have any other kind of musical training, like, or any kind of technical training like that, or theory training?
No, nope. Self-taught. When it came to any instrument that I played, I'll just uh, YouTube, and then just kind of learn, the basics from there. When I was young, like
Mm,
I would like elementary, middle school, I did take drum lessons for about a year, and
okay.
then I tried to do keys, piano lessons. But I just don't think I was vibing with my teachers. I also don't think I was taking it seriously. I was like heavy into sports, football, track, basketball. So I didn't, I was real like low key about my passion and love for the arts and music. I thought I was about to,
Right.
I thought I was going to the NFL, to be completely honest, you know.
Oh,
But like
damn.
once I got to high school, like my high school team, the varsity squad had went like 0-40 before I got there. That's, for the last 4 years they lost every game straight, and for my 4 years they had lost every game
Wow.
straight. So by my sophomore year, bro, I had knew like, yeah, I'm an art dude. Like this sports shit ain't for me. Like, cause it's not like I'm a bad player, but at the end of the day, if I can't control the outcome of all this hard work I'm putting in, nah, I need to be in a form where the energy that I put into something, I could like monitor and track the results coming out. Like if I put a whole bunch
Mhm.
of hours into loving music and making music and creating and building relationships with people and all of that, I can see how I'm 10 years into I Am Root. Or when people think of the I Am Root brand, they think of X, Y, and Z experiences. Not that it's all rooted in music, but like my experience as an artist has been creating music, but also creating opportunities for artists. So it's
Mhm.
just a different outlook on it.
Yeah, I feel that. I guess in that same regard, I'm also mostly pretty much all self-taught because I've never had any kind of musical training at all. Like, I mean, I had music class in like fourth grade where they
Mm-hmm.
taught us hot cross buns with the fucking recorder. Like I
Oh
would,
yeah.
I don't know if I'll call that training. But yeah, like the guitar, I really learned that just by, oh, I like that way it sounds. Let me play this a million times until it sounds exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the same with like digital sketching now. It's pretty much, I mean, YouTube videos, like let me ask you this, like if you're watching hours and hours of YouTube tutorials, are you self-taught?
Not really, right? I feel like it's like homeschool, if you will, or some kind of like, because I mean the lessons are there, but I don't know. It's tough for me to say. I personally don't really feel like it's self taught. Because obviously someone's teaching it to you,
Mm,
but you can't just like message that
right,
dude if you don't understand. You know, and be like, yo,
right.
bro, like at minute 30, and second 28, you were talking about hammer on here, and like do this part. Like I'm having some trouble. Can you like show me further? It's like you don't get that actual teach. When you're being taught something, you have an opportunity to ask questions and kind of go further in that regard. When I was learning online, or my experience with it has always been watch it. You learn from it, and the parts that are a little fuzzy to you click around until you figure it out. And it just
Hmm.
depends, because even with like video editing and stuff, that I learn on YouTube, I don't wouldn't consider myself necessarily a self-taught. I'm video editor because I learned a lot from YouTube, but some stuff involves paid programs. It's like, all right, they show you this much, and it's like, aha, to get that crazy spark flash thing, you got to download this, and it costs $49.99 or whatever. So then
Yeah.
you're figuring out every possible workaround to just get beyond that one step, because you spent 30 minutes watching this video. In the last 10 minutes, you need a paid program to use or whatever. But yeah, no, that's definitely a good question. I never really, really thought about it, but like if I had to kind of, you know, throw something out there, that's what I would think. It's definitely not all the way, because self-taught all the way would be E. Oh, that's E. Okay, you just like make a note of it. It's like you're kind of
Right.
figuring it
Yeah.
out backwards, like without looking up any like resources. But I mean, if you just use the resources available to you and figure it out, kinda, it's like a
Right.
self-made millionaire, but you got a 500K donation to start.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that because of things like that, we're in this definitely this very special time to be an artist, of all things. I mean, it's a special time to be a lot of different things, but specifically to be an artist because, um, like for example, we were talking about getting a MacBook Pro versus getting a PC or something like that. I just generally have never been a computer person. Like for work, I'm very good at Excel. Like anything that needs to be done in Excel, I'll just figure it out. I'll YouTube tutorial it,
Yeah.
or I'll just like fumble through it and I'll figure it out. So I'm good. I'm good in the sense like for example, like my degree is in mechanical engineering. Like when I think about that, that literally means nothing other than the fact that I'm certified to have some kind of problem solving capability.
Hmm.
Like I can't really engineer anything. Like I literally don't know how to engineer. But the way I see it, that degree says that I have problem solved my way through that curriculum is
Hmm.
kind of how I see it in my head. And so when it comes to computers, I'm good at figuring out what I need to do for work. I need to figure out that Excel thing. Okay, boom, done. Sure. I need to figure out this Salesforce thing or whatever. Of course, boom, done. You pay me to do that, of course. But in my own personal life, I'm like, okay, I gotta download spyware. I'm like, bro, what the fuck?
Right.
Uh, and you give me the option of like, oh, the MacBook Pro comes with like, you don't got to do anything like that. I'm like, I'm going with that 9 times out of 10.
Right.
Uh, and so we're in this special time where like we have these tools, and no plug for Apple because like I said, I am on the fence. I'm going to a PC laptop because of the price and other reasons as well. But we are in this time where the tools are getting so good that the only limits that are kind of like remaining are your creativity, not so
Hmm.
much how good you are at moving the brush. I mean, sure. I mean, right now I use the iPad for my art, and for a lot of it, I use like Procreate, and that's a lot of sketching. So it's
Hmm.
still you still got to be good at sketching things. But I also do a lot of vector art, which basically is like I choose the triangle option, I click and drag,
Hmm.
bigger triangle, and I make all kinds of shapes that are very complex and look complex, but are really very simple.
Hmm.
And so I'm able to create very complex things very easily
Hmm.
nowadays. And I find that to be across the board. Like I have Ableton, I'm able to do drums, keys. I can do guitar on Ableton. I can do the flute. I can do all kinds of stuff that I don't own, but I just have Ableton. That doesn't matter that I don't own any of those. I have Ableton, and that's good enough for me. And that I think will just keep evolving to the point where we'll just like be able to think, I want to create this type of sound, and it'll create itself. So the
Hmm.
limit will truly only be, can you think it? Can you think of a good enough thing? Not, can you spend 8 years practicing 6 hours a day to play that thing yourself?
Right. Yeah.
I think back then it was much harder to get to this level, and it's getting easier and easier to be an expert at different things.
Right. Right. No, that's very true, man. You raised a great point, and it kind of helps kind of bring things back full circle because a little earlier we were also talking about like the songwriting. You know how you pay. You know you put a lot of focus on your
Mm.
songwriting, giving blues and kind of adding a little bit of that comedic relief or a little satire here. And I was talking about how I like poetry for being able to kind of flesh out those ideas and hip hop, and not all hip hop, of course. You got Kendrick, Cole, like there's pockets of things that get real lyrical, and there's also pockets of things that are just real poppy, in terms of like pop
Mm-hmm.
music, really just friendly to the ear, easy to repeat, TikTok worthy music. Um, and I feel like, kind of some of the points that you were bringing up with how things are eventually, how technology is growing. It's not so much, how fine your pen is in terms of drawing or sketching, but just the things that you're thinking of, like, how thoughtful that idea was in general. It's not, I'm mad, I'm crazy about you, but how so? Like, and,
Right.
like actually bring those images to life, outside of, you know, cause like, I talk a little bit with some of my homies about like, let's say like 90s R&B, how in some of those like songs it's like they profess their love and it's real poetic and it's kind of dramatic, but it's like real, like it's a real emotional. They're talking through things, and
Right.
there was a transition to where it's like, all right, instead of the whole butter them up, it's like it got to a point where it's just straight to the point. Like, I want to stick this in you and scream my name, and it's just like, all right, so it's
Right.
just like, obviously, like, some writers don't want to abstract. Abstraction isn't always the best, where it's like, all right, eventually get to the point of what you're trying to say. But it's just kind of walking that balance a little better, to where it's like, all right, we don't have to just give it all to the listener. Like, we have to creatively, like, kind of paint this world or paint this idea to be received.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a race to whoever can say the most I don't want to say clear and concise, because that's not necessarily the best, but it's just like, it's not a rush to just make it the best factory cut thing. I guess that's along the lines of what I'm trying to get at, but like, yeah, just playing that little balance a little better.
Yeah, and I guess to add to that from earlier, it's definitely not about adding complexity to make it unique.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer in keeping things very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Just using simple techniques in a unique way to make
Mm-hmm.
it overall unique. As I was saying, I like to gather a lot of content. Like, I'm a person that likes to gather different points of views. I enjoy. I get more out of talking to people that I disagree with than people that I agree with. Like, when I agree with you on everything, it's like, yeah, it feels good to talk to you, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, fuck yeah, you believe what I believe, cool. But at the same time, I'm not getting a whole lot from that interaction, because you already believe what I believe, like, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I talk to somebody that I disagree with, I have to kind of do things like, like, okay, first of all, what is it that I believe, and why do I believe that? Okay, then what do they believe, and why would they believe that? Okay, it really forces you to really think, if you're one of those people that likes that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not if a lot of people are like, oh, I can't even listen to you. But in that regard, what I'm saying is that I just like to gather all kinds of content, and I find inspiration in so many different things. And, like, for example, like, I was watching a Jackie Chan thing. Like, I was on YouTube, and I was watching this video called, I think it was Jackie Chan My Stunts, which is Jackie Chan explaining how he does a lot of his stunts that he does on films.
Okay.
And the main takeaway that Jackie Chan kind of was putting together in this video was that he wasn't doing anything fancy, anything fancier than regular people have access to. Like, all that he was doing, and this is by his own words, I'm paraphrasing, but all that he's doing is taking very simple techniques that a lot of people are familiar with, but just using them in a unique way, giving his Jackie Chan spin to old techniques, but that's what makes it his own thing.
Right.
So I'm a firm believer in just, if you have basic training in an instrument, you can still create a masterpiece. If you have basic training in an instrument, you just have to have that inspiration, but you don't have to be an expert to create masterpieces, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. That's very true, because often we overthink it, the process and
Definitely
everything about it, what people are going to think, what we think about it. Just putting too much thought into it can definitely prevent you from releasing something. It's definitely done that to me. Like, late night radio was something, I forget what year I actually put it out, but it was something that was like ready 3 years before it actually came out, but I'm just like juxtaposing myself with, against things that I shouldn't. And for that reason, it's just like, oh no, next year is the year, or I'm going to add this to it and then it'll be ready. But if I would have just put it out, I could have moved on from it so long ago, and been on to something else, like received whatever energy I was supposed to get from that, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. But, it was something that, as I was creating, I would make new beats while still, that concept was in the works. I'd be working on new stuff, and it'll get put on pause, the new stuff. I'm like, oh man, this is fire, but it's not in the scope of what that project was supposed to be, so those things would be put on the shelf. And even now, I'm digging through old folders, just finding stuff, or finding little clips that I had posted on Instagram when I was making beats, and I'm like, wow, dude, like where did this go? But because it wasn't the vibe of late night radio, it wasn't time to be worked on. It was a cool idea that I had to get out somewhere, and save. But often when I do stuff like that, I don't go back and actually reopen those folders and like finish those things. It's like a notebook, I just like put notes in there and then flip the page, and the next day it's a new note, but it's like that last note was something valuable in that. And I'm just, trying to do better at being in those moments. And like, sure, if I run out of ideas for the day, I'm done with the beat. Like, been working on it for 3 hours, ear fatigue, whatever the case is. But just trying to incorporate a better habit of like actually going back for those beats, or going back for those ideas. Because there's a little value still left in them.
Yeah, definitely. And so I do have a question for you, because being an artist and being a creative, or how people have different ways of phrasing it, or different words for it. I find it's one of the things that I think about a lot, like when you just have some free time, or like, you're lying in bed right before you fall asleep and you're thinking about the universe, you're thinking about all kinds of things. One of the things that I think about frequently is creativity. It's being an artist, what that really means, because it's easy to pinpoint a creative. You're like, oh yeah, that dude's he paints a lot, or I see him perform. He's a singer, or he's this, he's that. I see him do this. But that's sort of like, like, oh, gravity's a thing, prove it. Oh yeah, you drop something. Well, that's showing me the effects of gravity. The fact remains, scientifically, we don't really understand gravity. We can't create gravity. All that we know is that if you create enough mass, you get some gravity. But other than that, all we can do is show you the effects of gravity, but we can't explain gravity itself, really. I find that to be the case as well with being an artist, being a creative, because it's easy to say, like, for sure. I mean, I see that you have all those instruments there, all that equipment. I've seen you perform poetry. I've seen you perform music and things like that. I've seen our friends do the same, perform their own craft and stuff. So easily, I'm like, oh, all creatives, sure. But if like an alien showed up, I'm like, what's the difference between like you guys and like these people that just go to work and pretty much just watch Netflix and do nothing the rest of the day? How are you people different? And like, other than the fact that you do stuff, you do art, yeah, but why? Why do you do that versus not? And why do they not do that versus doing something? That I find gets to like a really weird type of realm when you're like, it's completely unknown as far as I know, because like, how would you define creativity, keeping in mind that creativity is not just used for art?
Right. Yeah. I feel like it's a real, using another word, it's like those innovative spirits where it's like, even though you're not like making, like, people who have patents for sandals, like, those people are creatives in a way, because they're creating functional tools for either entertainment, for how a society functions. I mean, obviously there's creators of life, but like, for me, it's just things that are made to serve a purpose. If you create tools, art, those things kind of give me creator like vibes. It's like where you're innovating, you're even, I mean, problem solving in a way, where you're creating solutions. Like for me, it's just like, I look at it, more so in that space than specifically for art, because I know some artists who, they feel like the word artist kind of limits their scope of things. They have plans for like social reform, and they want to do so much more, and they feel like the word creative slash activist works for them, because it's like it encompasses art, but it also encompasses this gray area of other that I could possibly be doing, when you can't quite define it, but you want something, I guess, that could work for the general public to take that word and be like, oh, they do something, that's either art or, I mean, I feel like most people generally probably would think art, if you're just like receiving the information, like, yeah, I'm a creative. You may guesstimate it's art, music, or something along the lines of that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I do, at least incorporate those who create functioning tools of society, programs, just these different things that help communities change or even individuals.
Yeah, it's interesting. Creative slash activist. It's an interesting one. I had heard, I had not heard those two words combined, but so that's interesting. I guess personally, I like the word visionary myself
Mm-hmm.
because something that people use interchangeably, but I think to find to be two different things, very much so, is creativity and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people like, oh yeah, he's creative. He uses his imagination. Like they kind of use those kind of interchangeably. But I just when I think of those two things are very differently are very different for me. And I think when you're able to kind of combine those two, you're really more of like a visionary type of person rather than just an artist or something like that. I mean, maybe a creative might encompass that too, but I guess the word that I kind of think in my mind is visionary. Like you can kind of see this pattern where no other people can't, and you can imagine things to add where other people just wouldn't be able to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that. Creativity and imagination. Definitely, in terms of creativity, like a creative person could definitely use their imagination, or they could not at all like use their imagination and still be considered a creative person. And then on the scope
Mm-hmm.
of like visionary, I do see, the wideness of, a term like that to where you could encompass, somebody who obviously uses their imagination, or, a creative part of their imagination, to be able to connect to another cause or another initiative. Perhaps it's, may not be art. It could be just how, like social groups operate. You could have a great understanding
Mm.
of historical trends, and be a powerful visionary for the future for a company, for an art movement, or, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, like someone like Donald Glover
Mm-hmm.
is somebody that I'm a fan of. I mean, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with his acting stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm familiar with him in general. And I'm a fan of his music for sure. I love his music. And but what I'm a fan of the most is the fact that he's so versatile with how he's able to. I mean, he's like a comedian,
Comedy. Yep.
an actor, musician. He's all kinds of other stuff
And
that
he's
I'm
directing it.
forgetting
He got his
now.
own show for Atlanta.
Right. He does so many things and it's not like I mean, he was known for certain things at first, but he really kind of brought everything up almost all at once. Like he
Mm-hmm.
just became known as like this general, like just a general visionary is kind of how I see a person like that. Whereas, somebody who's a really great musician that we all love or whatever, that's, a great musician, maybe like, a creative, a genius in music, but they're not quite a visionary because they can't quite apply that imagination or creativity to other things like someone like Donald Glover or other people can. And it's not just him that does it,
Mm-hmm.
but I find that people like Donald Glover who are multi-talented and seemingly so effortless, like how he's able to do everything so good. It's not like he's just like, oh yeah, he's a good musician, but he's a shitty actor.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean he's just good at everything.
Right.
Um, I find that he's like a prototype for like the future human
Mm-hmm.
who's gonna have access to so many things that they're gonna be so good at so many things.
Right. Yeah. Especially in a world where like we're coming up, you were told or advised to do one thing really well, and then do all those other things. Whereas yeah, he was
Hmm.
doing comedy, getting his acting thing going, like making music, and like some of his earlier music, you know, I've been tracking his career for some time, you know, and I, it wasn't all this good, you know what I'm saying? But like, you know, you
Hmm.
have to continue to work at it, you know, and eventually like
Yeah.
now any of the older stuff that I would deem or anybody else would deem like not that good, it doesn't matter. Like, cause he's created so much. Like when you see a success story like that, like, you know,
Hmm.
you can't wallow on the things that didn't go so great. It's like, dude, this dude is doing it all. Like, you know, and as you know the story continues to progress, that's pretty much what people want out of today. Is like more revenue streams, you know, the ability to not be boxed into just one thing. And you know, he could have tried to do the comedy thing, and but there's a ceiling on that, specifically when you are a visionary, you know, and you're like, yo, this creative thing that I have inside of me is more than just, you know, the colors that I see in comedy. You know, it's like
Hmm.
like what I want to do has to be on screen as well. But then it's only so much that I could do on screen or I can say on screen because I'm following the script. So I got to make music as well so I can say what I want to say, you know. But then there's still this
Right.
whole thing with music. Not everybody's going to listen to it. You know, the reach is a little low. So I need to do this other thing too. Like, and that's completely fine. Where maybe, you know, 10 or 15 years ago, kids growing up that are in elementary school or middle school, they're discouraged from like thinking that way. I mean, art in general was something that kids were discouraged from pursuing, specifically because of the money. It's like you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should be an engineer, you should go pursue those things. You go to college and you know
Right.
yada yada yada. But once even you know even once the layers start to get peeled back from that, and it's like, oh yeah, you could make it as you know doing art or whatever. Not that everybody's parent holds that value. You know, still only a select few that have kind of relaxed back from just you know that old mantra or old model of thinking. But yeah, you know, it's still ultimately a tough decision, you know, for someone to make and you know do that full time.
Yeah, definitely, because I just think it's absolutely amazing that how he has that much command over so many different disciplines. Because like when you think about what it takes to be a good artist, you know, that's even itself is kind of like it's based upon opinion because it's not like a fact what is a good artist versus what isn't. But one of the things would that maybe some people might agree with is that to be a good artist in one discipline, you got to have some kind of knowledge of the pop culture of that discipline that you're in. Like if you're a hip hop artist, I would imagine you got to have some knowledge of what's cool and what isn't in the hip hop realm to know how to create good content.
Hmm.
And to have that knowledge of different things, comedy, acting, music, whatever else he does. I think it's just amazing. And it shows that how incredible humans are, because while people like him are right now less common, I think that what they're doing is they're really just uncovering how far one person can really go. Like if you're a kid now and you see someone like Donald Glover, you're like, oh yeah, I could probably do that. Whereas when
Right.
I was a kid, I didn't really have too many examples like that, if any. I just thought you got to be good at one thing. I got to be a really good guitar. And so for a long time, I was just a guitar player. And then as I began to really kind of like, yeah, guitar is good, but I'm like, I really kind of like, I know I can sketch something really cool. I know it. And it began to get like an itch. And so I began to branch out. And it's just like this kind of feeling that I get, you gotta express yourself in different ways. And so I just find people like that, Donald Glover and other people to be, like I said, Elon Musk is another good example, because
Yeah.
another type of visionary character who is good at so many different things. I mean, like PayPal was like the first thing, and it was SpaceX, Tesla. I mean, the Boring Company, such a wide variety of stuff. I mean, people like that, I think, are like, yeah, like the prototype to really what humans are going to be like or can be like in the
Hmm.
future if they get their shit together, really.
Yeah.
Um, and really, it begin to explore different their interests in a free fashion like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, cause yeah, you brought up, you know, the perfect point, which was about you know them being the prototype. Cause I was like, just imagine, dude, like if those were the folks, like if those folks were the norm, you know, coming up, like if Donald Glover, the Elon
Mm,
Musk were just what we saw every day as like you know things that you should go out and uh, subscribe to, we'd probably just have different mentalities altogether. I mean, we're here now, you know what I'm saying, but we
For
probably would have
sure.
arrived here much sooner and be on to whatever's to come after that. Like, trying
Right.
to one up that. So the ones coming up today, like, are definitely gonna be definitely in a good space in terms of like what to look up to, because like this whole LLC Twitter is a thing, and entrepreneurship talk, and everybody's looking into real estate and how to sell on this side, and just really how to create revenue streams for themselves, that can kind of create a layer of independence. Because you know like at one point we were taught that you go at it in this conveyor belt way. Now people are realizing they can hop off and kind of take this detour, because you thought you had to do shit by a certain age in order to have a certain level of whatever it is. But like even myself, like I turned 29 yesterday, and it's just like, sure, I'm very, very close to 30, but it's just like I'm still at a point where I could make a shit ton of mistakes, and still be young enough to turn shit around, and make a huge
Yeah.
change. One of the biggest entrepreneurs that I follow, Gary Vee, in terms of him, like, he was 34, before like kicking off his own empire, besides his dad shit that he built for his father and the liquor business and all of that. But like, before he started building any personal brand for himself, he was 34.
Hmm.
And for me, I always thought the age thing was a thing. Like, I wrote a book fresh out of high school, coming into college, and I thought like publishing a book
Hmm.
at 18 was like this phenomenal thing, but then I got to the point of editing, and I'm just like, nah, this is too expensive to try to get this thing
Right.
edited, and then like so fast forward, book never got published, but like, I was just always thinking like, man, an 18-year-old with a book, that narrative is far more fire than me dropping it now at 29. It just had a little more impact. But at the same time, the type of book I wrote was about like, I was big into reading self-help, so it wasn't like necessarily a self-help
Hmm.
book, but it was just in the space of like some positive kind of motivational, like just kind of perspective, if you will. It's called Our Minds, Our Obligations. But then ultimately I just came down to like, it was the editing thing that kind of made me not want to pursue, but also like, yo, I'm 18, like, who wants to read the perspective of an 18-year-old kid, you know what I'm saying, in terms of like talking about
Right.
life. Like, I wanted to go live more, and like I felt like it'll be way more impactful after I've experienced so much. Now, you know, at 29, if I decided to write that, the perspective of it would be far more different, given the time I spent trying to build I Am Root, the time I've spent coming to terms with myself and the music that I want to create, or the image that I want to portray. It's just like so much different than that, and I mean,
Hmm.
ultimately, all that to say is just like, for me, I've learned to practice a lot more patience, in terms of like when I'm creating, and just with myself too, as an artist, and like, as I create and do things, it's not about, trying to hit a certain deadline, or thinking about it in this way. Like, I was completely overthinking stuff back then. It was just like,
Yeah.
I was just like trying to have shock value, like for clout, before they started using the term for clout. Like, I wanted to be the 18-year-old with the book more so than I wanted that book to be the best thing someone ever read. So,
Hmm. Yeah, man. Well, first of all, happy belated birthday. Yeah.
oh, I appreciate that, man.
Uh,
Thank you very much.
yeah. If there was a party, I wasn't invited, guys. Just so everybody knows.
Nah, nah,
Yeah.
no party, man. Just a relaxing day. My girl
Yeah.
had surprised me. We went down to Tempe Town Lake, hopped in one of those boats. We
Mm.
were pedaling our ass off.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, got a workout in.
Yeah, man. I'm always down for chill birthdays, man. But yeah, man, the whole age thing. I mean, like, I'm 33, and yeah, like, when I turned 30, I was like, sure, yeah. Like, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, I'm 30 years old now. But it wasn't like some people, like, they get crushed when they turn 30. And like my whole thing on that is that the people who focus on, like, oh, I'm getting older, I'm getting, or this and that, the people who focus on age in a negative way like that are typically the people who aren't doing shit with their lives, and that's why they're anxious about it in the first place. Whereas the people who are doing things, not even necessarily being famous or being rich, but they're following their interests, they're following what they like, and they're just living life. yeah, they notice they're getting older. Obviously, you just notice. But they don't get crushed by it. They're not like, oh God, I'm running out of time. I mean, we're all running out of time, but some people are using their time much more wisely than others.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there are just way too many stories out there of people making it in their 40s, in their 50s. And at this point, like I was saying earlier, we're in this kind of like weird new age of being an artist, of being a human essentially, where it's like, what is making it? Before it was like you get a record deal and you go from playing local shows to playing arenas or something like that.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I'm like, I don't even know who has made it and who hasn't. Like for example, someone like the Colored Ape Band. I'm like, they're pretty big. I'm like, I don't even know what's different, between the Colored Ape Band and like a band that's playing at arenas. I'm like, the Colored Ape Band is fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's one thing too that I learned when in the art scene too. I'm like, so many people are so good at what they do, and when I hear stuff in just the local art scene, even at some open mics, I'm like, this is just as good as some of it that as I hear in iTunes, trending #1. I'm like, it's crazy how talented some people are and are completely unknown. But they have like also like 8,000 followers. I'm like, okay, well, are they famous? Are they like what is going on? Like it's so hard to say to know what's going on. Like who's famous nowadays, who has made it, what it really is, and there's really that barrier has been broken. I feel there's no such thing as I've made it, and it's just really up to it's like a spectrum. Are you good? Are you kind of good? Are you really good? Are you like prodigy good? Whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's no cutoff like there used to be. So it's like this super free time to be in. It's like there's no better time to be an artist than now, I feel.
Right. Right. Nah, man, some very good points there. I definitely want to thank you, dude, for hopping in here. Joining me.
Sure.
This, episode 5 of our Culture Convos. I don't remember the last actual conversation we've had, like the date on it. You know what I'm saying? It's been a
long
minute,
time.
man. So we are definitely looking forward to get. I think it was definitely a message. I mean, not face to face or verbal, but like the last communication I have, it was either via text or on Instagram. It was like you asking us, like you had a show planned right before everything locked down. You were trying to see if we were gonna be doing anything. And I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for that. It's dope, being a part of the community, but also like when things slow down, just having people out there that care to see when the next one is. Some people don't message at all, but when folks hit us up like, yo, when y'all coming back or when you doing something, like it's definitely a good reminder as to why we do what we do, because like when everything shut down, I'm looking at it as a blessing. I'm like, man, our last few shows wasn't quite packed. It was just like we kind of got lucky here, where I don't have the pressure of trying to have to promote this thing and expect all these people to come. Am I losing money? Who I got to pay? All this craziness, kind of slowed me down a bit. But, messages like the one you send and some other, wonderful people that, love and support the Iron Root brand, it, kind of helped us refocus, and really we spend a lot of that time focusing on what we want to do once, we're ready to open back up. And I think people will be really excited, with what we're about to come up with. So I'll definitely be reaching out, if you're trying to hit the mic and do some things. Yeah, we definitely plan on switching the vibe a bit, kind of nostalgic for those who've been, rocking with us since our start in 2011, and we started doing events in 2013. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I just want to say thanks for that. Do you have anything, in terms of like just want to put the people onto that you're either working on that you want to share? And if not, man, what we like to end with is just words of encouragement for up and coming artists that are, just trying to find their place, find their voice, find that consistency. You could paint that, that person could be any person, a musician, a visual artist. But yeah, if you don't have anything to roll out and kind of announce or, share, obviously, please drop your social, so people can follow you, keep up with you. You drop some gems here. So I'd imagine that, folks want to hear a little more about that podcast. I know we started prior to recording talking about your pod, but I don't think since we've been rolling here,
Right.
we've mentioned the pod. So I would like to hear a little bit about, where people can check that out, if it's gonna be making
Yeah.
that return and all that.
Yeah, for sure, man. And yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate all you guys, like you guys, Tyndall, all these people who put up open mics and shows. Like we all know, when people who aren't artists see artists, it's easy for them to not know how much work goes into that one performance they just saw. Just like for the artists themselves, it's easy sometimes. I'm not saying for who, for me, says for me, sometimes it's easy to forget how much work it goes to set up those shows. How many connections you got to reach out to, the venue, all the artists, and this and that. You got to make sure you got this lineup. And so yeah, every so often I'll be at a show and I'll like step back and think, holy shit, dude. I mean, I couldn't even imagine how many hours of work was put in to set this whole thing up. So I'm always trying to, be conscious of that and grateful to those who put the shows like you guys. So, and yeah, I'm always definitely excited to hear about what you guys have coming up. I myself don't have any shows coming up because obviously because the pandemic, and barely now. I'm just hearing about some shows like Art Night. Still, it's kind of coming back up.
Okay.
There's a show this Saturday. I'm not even sure what it is exactly, but I might hit that up for a little bit. Other than that, yeah, like my Instagram is Brown Martinez. Just I think there's two Z's at the end, but just Brown like the color, Martinez, and you should find me. But yeah, the podcast. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it depends on who it is, it depends on who I'm talking to. I'll like just go all out and completely nerd out. And for others, I'm like, yeah, it's about this or whatever, because it's gone through a bunch of different evolutions. Like at first, it was a radio show at Radio Phoenix.
Okay.
Shout out to Radio Phoenix at Phoenix Center for the Arts. It was called Living the Dream, and it was basically about interviewing people who were just doing passionate things that they were passionate about, and just whatever stuff like that. After a while, it kind of evolved into something called typical human behavior, which was analyzed just people being people, and it's a lot of different topics. But we found that it was too broad. It wasn't just it was too broad for, we didn't have much of an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And but as we did research for all those topics, we began to realize that there was a lot of weirdness that was sprinkled throughout the culture. A lot of just weird stuff. That's how we, at the time, we just explained it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a few episodes, but we've decided to go all out into that one topic. And so the podcast is now called Spectrum of Strangeness.
Okay.
And you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, I think it's Stitch,
Okay.
or Twitch,
I
whatever
think
the
it's Stitch,
podcast one
yeah,
is.
something like that.
Stitch. Yeah, and SoundCloud as well. But basically, it's just about, I mean, if I were to just kind of like, it's about that. I would say it's about UFOs, but really it goes much deeper than that, because I'm not sure if you kept up with it, but the government has been releasing a lot of UFO stuff recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been seeing that.
And I find that I don't know how else to phrase it, but you know how like I consider politics, what we see on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC, or whatever, what they show us is like a show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm not gonna say it's pre-written or anything like that. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, voting's all a fraud. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a show like that, but I'm saying it's a show like there's an agenda to all that stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
more like a reality show. Like you just let them like say whatever they want, but there's a production behind it. Like, guys, say whatever you want in that speech, but we got to get these things across, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see politics. And in that regard, what we're being shown in the UFO stuff by the Pentagon is part of that show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, I mean, it's hard to go much deeper than that, but if you're interested in that sort of thing, like as a kid, aside from art and music, what always got me going was like sleepovers with friends and like, guys, what do you guys think about UFOs?
Mm-hmm.
Are aliens real? I was
Yeah.
always that kid. I
Right.
was always watching sci-fi movies, horror films. But guys, what if ghosts are aliens? That was
Right.
always
It's like
me.
one of
That
those
kid,
stories
that
where you
kid at
have the
sleep.
light right here in
Dude,
the
that was
dark.
always me. Yeah, and that's a whole other drama. Sci-fi horror, I'm huge
Yeah.
on. Why? I don't know. But basically, the podcast, if that was also you as a kid, or if you have any interest in those topics or want deeper things than what the government is showing you, then yeah, check out Spectrum of Strangeness on whatever podcast format you choose. Otherwise, follow me on Instagram at Brown Martinez. I might set up an individual art page. I don't know. I'm not sure if you have that, but like I have my like Brown Martinez would be like my personal page for like general, maybe some music, some visual art and stuff. But
Hmm.
like have like one Instagram account only for visual art and music, like no personal stuff, just only strictly art.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm about to. That's kind of what my Dom route is. It's about to be transitioned fully to just music and art stuff, cause for the brand itself, like I Am Root, it has five.
Mm.
For blog, apparel, events, the podcast. So it's just a little bit too much to manage. Like there are a couple of heads that assist in managing those, but I don't need that many of them. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, for
um,
sure. I feel that.
I just and I'm so low key. Even like this is probably the most we've even talked, huh? Just like consistently nonstop. But
Yeah,
just
yeah.
in general, like I'm not too talkative, and I'm hoping to going forward with my music, be a lot more forthcoming about my story and like who I am through the art, ultimately, because yeah, that's what I want the catch to be. I do feel interesting, as a person.
Right.
Obviously, when I talk to people one on one, I'm a lot more comfortable than if it was 10 of us in a room. Like I wouldn't want to be the center of attention, But if it's like two or three of us, like I'm a little more comforted and like just relaxing in chatting and talking. But sometimes large crowds,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't fit the vibe. It's just like I just rather lay back and kind of be the root, not the branch or the flower, if you know what I mean.
Hi. Yeah, I feel that. And I guess that totally reminds me, I didn't even answer your last point about inspirational words, but
Oh yeah.
what you just said reminded me of that because yeah, like I myself, I wouldn't call myself a social person, even though I did a lot of talking just now in this interview. But like a lot of times I'll go places and I'll just like completely avoid everybody. I'll just, be like playing chess on my phone, or I'll have my Audible on or something like that. I just don't like to talk to people when I'm out. I like to kind of keep to myself. I'm very introverted, except for with certain people. Like I knew, because yeah, this is probably the most that we've talked in one sitting, but I knew that you're an open-minded guy. You like to converse, and we've had other conversations in the past. So I knew that you were open to a lot of different things. But so with people like you, I find it very easy to open up. But in general, man, I'm like, fuck that. I'm not down to talk to them. Like, just let me be. But that also, I find it can be a detriment. So uh, a lot of times I find it difficult to accept the fact that I have certain talents. Like a lot of artists might be in the same boat where like they might be shy about displaying their art,
Hmm.
or they might be shy about singing loudly at their apartment complex, or singing too loudly or whatever, playing their music too loudly. And yeah, maybe there can be too loud, but whatever. Or they're afraid to show their friends their new sketch because they don't know what they're gonna say or whatever. And yeah, I mean, like in general, I mean, all I would say is like easier said than done, but you got to find a way to be like, fuck that, and move past that, because I find that the more I talk to people, the more I meet artists, the more I meet people at work, people everywhere, I find that there are a lot of unrealized artists out there. There are a lot of people who you talk to them and you're like, dude, there's something about that person. I'm like, I could totally see you in the art scene doing something. I'm like, what the fuck are
Right.
you doing at work here? And I'm just doing nothing here. And I find that when you kind of talk to them a little bit more, if you're curious like me, you find that they just like, yeah, I find that, yeah, I have a lot of interest in stuff like that, but yeah, you know, I'm gonna get the time to put in the work. I got kids, I got this and that. And they put all these mental blocks. I mean, yeah, you got kids. I don't know what it's like to have kids, but all I know is that there are a lot of people with kids who are doing fantastic things. I don't know how they do it, but they find time.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of, you know, basically comes down to you just got to find time. Everybody's busy. You know, everybody's, oh, yeah, I've been busy, man. It's like, dude, everybody's busy these days. Like, what do you think? You're fucking special because you're busy? It's like, dude, everybody's busy.
Exactly.
So you just got to make time, find time, no matter what. If it's important to you, you'll find the time. If it's not important, like with dating, man, if that girl wants to go out with you, she'll find the time to say yes. If she doesn't want, oh, yeah, I'm busy, I got this and that, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you find the time, you make the time, put in the work, and you just don't be shy about displaying your talents, because that might be what you were here to do. You don't even know it.
Right.
And if you're putting a damper on that, if you're putting a limit on that, then you just might be putting a limit on your overall self as a person. You probably wouldn't want that.
Okay. Yeah, man. No, that's definitely some valuable input right there. You know, don't fall victim to analysis paralysis either, you know, and just show it to your friends, dude, or, you know, share it and kind of just take that step, you know, and then take the next one after that. But, you know,
for sure.
I forgot something I saw. I don't remember who the quote is from, but, you know, on Twitter, you always see stuff. And it was a good one. But it was just along the lines of, like, you know, in order to, like, be the best or some shit at what you want to do, you just got to get started. You know what I'm saying? At the least. It's not like to be the best. I'm fucking up the quote 100%. But, like, along the lines of, like, in order to get to where you want to be, like, you got to get started at least, like, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
It's just like, you know, once you, obviously for those who realize they have the artistic ability, I know you were mentioning for some of the ones who may not even realize it's in them, but, like, once you realize it, just take that step and definitely don't overthink it. This has been a good one, man. I'm gonna have to get you back once we get season 2 rolling of this, and I get my in-person set up. I'm gonna try to have a nice little in-person little vibe that people can come and, you know, kind of get comfortable, and we'll chat. Looking to add some people to the team here too, so we'll have a little more flexibility, so that I don't have to be at the controls and interviewing. For the people at home, I probably look awkward because I have the program into which I'm recording all of this into up to make sure, you know, everything is straight, levels, and all that random stuff. But in a perfect world, it'll be a separate figure in this seat, you know what I'm saying? And then I'm able to just enjoy the interview and kind of just dive in without having to focus on the technical side of stuff. But I mean, that's the world we're in today, you know, as artists and, you know, people looking to create multiple revenue streams for themselves and their families. It's like a lot of it is wearing multiple hats.
Definitely, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And anytime you want to have me on, for sure, just let me know. And if you're down to talk about anything in the weirdness realm, just let me know, and we'll have you on Spectrum of Strangeness, because we're always down to talk to people who don't know anything about a topic, because that's what we're curious about. If you don't know anything about this, what is your perspective?
Right.
Because sometimes that's the best perspective.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, man. That sounds fun. We'll have to get that set up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. Once again, thanks a lot for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. No problem, man.
Thank you for watching our content. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe, leave us a comment, or visit IamRudeCode.com for more Rudy content. Y'all stay up.